Welcome to Stop Overthinking, the podcast for overthinkers, people pleasers, and perfectionists who want to feel calm and confident enough to handle whatever life sends your way. I'm your host, Kristen Odegaard, a women's life and mindset coach, lifelong educator, and recovering perfectionist. Hey friends, thanks for joining me today. We're going to go back to the basics and talk about circumstances. I talk about this so much because it's a foundational principle, and I refer to it all the time. So it's important to make sure that everybody has a little bit more of an understanding of what it is that I'm talking about. And it's crucial to being able to quiet your mind, stop overthinking. So as we're interpreting the world around us, our brains offer us a lot of thoughts. Our brains offer us somewhere around 60,000 thoughts a day, maybe more if you're an overthinker. Majority of those just pass through our brain, like we'll notice colors or textures, how the floor feels under our feet, how someone interprets words, or how someone interprets actions. Those are all the thoughts that just keep flowing. And the piece that I want to talk about today is how we discern the difference between the facts and the actual circumstances in our lives and the stories that we tell ourselves about them. So I'm going to use the word circumstance for things that are outside of our control. These include other people, our past, and the weather. And sometimes we forget that we can't control those things, especially other people. So we like to expend a lot of energy trying to control people or change what happened in the past. And as frustrating as this can be, it's good news because we can't control the circumstances. We do get to control what we decide to think, how we feel, and how we behave. Circumstances are facts. They can be proven in a court of law. Everybody would agree with them. No adjectives, no describing words, not anything that's subjective. Most people will describe problems and situations and include very few circumstances or facts and not even realize it. When you're telling a story, a lot of it is your thoughts about it. Many times people think that they're just relaying the facts, but often it's a whole lot of thoughts. And this is how our human brain works. There's nothing wrong with it. But our circumstances are neutral. A person says words. It's a sunny day. It's 42 degrees outside. It's not positive. It's not negative. They're just neutral. Those issues most people can agree with. Where most people are like, wait a minute, what about like forest fires or slavery and 9/11? What about all the horrible things that happen in the world? Those aren't neutral. And what I would offer for you to consider is that they're not negative until we think that they're negative. And I'm not suggesting that you don't want to think they're negative, but you're the one who's deciding it has a negative meaning. And that's fine. That's a choice. You can absolutely do that. Everything in the world just happens. And some things we interpret as positive and some things we interpret as negative. And not everybody is going to have the same experience with everything. This is important to understand to be able to know how your brain is working with all of the things that are swirling around in it every single day. Okay, so here's an example. Hundreds of people die every single day in America. Most of us are not horrified every single day about those deaths. In fact, most of us are not even thinking about hundreds of people dying every single day. So while we would say that all of those deaths from natural causes and accidents and murders that happen in a day, pretty neutral about it. We understand that death happens. We understand we can't control all of that in the world. We feel pretty neutral about it on a day-to-day basis because we're not thinking about it consciously. Okay, but if I give you the details about a child, maybe an acquaintance or somebody a family that you know that has a terminal illness, I give you details about it, we humanize it, you make it personable, tell you the story, you think about it and it might be more upsetting than all of these other deaths. It's not that the death rate changed. Okay, things are still neutral. It's just the way that you're thinking about it and the meaning that you're giving it. This is how our brain works. The reason I bring up these kind of grotesque examples or horrifying things is because some people like to push back and say that circumstances aren't neutral. Things like 9/11, I mentioned before. How can you say it was a neutral event? The event happened. How we choose to think about it is what causes us to feel that way about it. Okay, so let's bring this in to your real life, because this is important when you pull everything together, the facts of your life, you start paying attention to how you are interpreting things. Okay, so this circumstance, okay, and remember the definition of this term is things that happen in the world. Circumstances are things that happen that we don't have direct control over. They are the facts. So an example of a circumstance might include other people's behavior, the weather, the political climate, war, death, taxes, other people's illness, our health, inflation, things that people have said, other people's actions. Those are circumstances. Okay. Byron Katie, a philosopher, would say that circumstances are reality. And when you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. And what she means by this quote is that it's not the circumstance that's causing us pain, but our thoughts about it and our argument against it that generates the feelings within us. So no matter how bad something happened in your past or how horrible the event, no matter what somebody says to you or how they treat you, what generates our emotional pain is how we think about it. Okay. There are visceral somatic responses in your body. And I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the way that our thoughts are working today. So our circumstances are neutral. It's our brain that makes them negative. Why? Because we're human. Our brain wants to protect us. It wants to label things as negative. And here's where our awareness can allow us to make sure that we're doing it consciously. If you understand that everything that happens in the world is neutral and that your interpretation is what defines your experience, what you will start to know is that you are so much more powerful than you ever could have imagined. I know this can be a tough concept to wrap your head around, and I had a really hard time with it too. When I first found coaching, there were things going on that I had been through a divorce, and there was lots of fallout. And in my mind, the facts of those circumstances to me were so negative. My kids were hurting, I was hurting, finances were different, we had to move, that these were all negative things. I talked to people, they agreed with me. They all agreed that it was negative. But the reality is the circumstances just happened. It was how I was choosing to think about it. And that's not wrong. And you don't have to switch every negative thing. It's just the awareness of being conscious about it and understanding you're making this interpretation. Okay. This is how you can start to manage your thoughts, get control of your brain, quiet your thinking, all of those pieces. Okay. So here's another example. So a person doesn't text you back, or your husband is watching TV and not making dinner or doing the laundry like you had asked him to. The person who doesn't include you for a night out, or your child having a meltdown when you just want 5 minutes of silence. Those are not negative circumstances. They're just the way people are behaving. We give the meaning to it about, what that means about your husband, what that means about your kid, your friends who didn't include you. It's our humanness. We want to define some things as negative, and you don't have to change that. Okay? I am not one who says that you're going to get happier by pushing away all of your negative thoughts. That's another episode. It's about having the whole entire human experience, but when you are more conscious about it, it gives you a whole different perspective. What I want you to believe about things is that what you want to believe. So when you start thinking that something out there in the world is bad or negative or awful, you just want to make sure that you know that you're the one that's interpreting that way. And you get to decide if that's how you want to proceed. Because about half the things in life you're going to think are positive and some you're going to think are negative. You don't have to blame anybody, including yourself or another person. It's just your interpretation. So even something like you would see an article in the newspaper or online or whatever about an apartment building fire, and you could most likely decide that that's a horrible, negative thing. And you will most likely decide to feel compassion towards the victims in that situation. And you would most likely decide to feel negatively that something like that happened. And there's nothing wrong with that. But other things that are presented to you may not be so black and white. And this is where our mind starts offering us a lot of different thoughts. And it's where you need to pay attention to what's going on in your mind. So when somebody cuts you off on the road, or maybe you didn't get the big sale you were pursuing at work, or when someone responds differently than what you expected, you can decide in the moment that those are negative experiences. Or you can just understand that that's how they, the other person, chose to behave. You're in charge of deciding whether it's horrible, whether it's negative, whether the person was mean or disrespectful, or you can just let it go and not attach a whole lot of meaning to it. And this is so important for overthinkers by nature, because your brain is offering you all sorts of thoughts about things. Every decision you make, the conversations that you have, the conversations that you didn't have, your brain is going to skew towards the negative protective mode. And that negative protective mode is going to bring on feelings of worry and anxiety and rejection. And from that place of worry, anxiety, and rejection, that's how you're showing up in the world. And the way that we can get a better handle on that is understanding that our thoughts are creating this, not the circumstance. Okay, so the more realistic conversation here and taking it home, that when you're having a conversation with your mother and she says she doesn't understand why you picked out that light colored couch for the living room, it's harder to keep clean and you're really just going to regret it in the future when it has stains on it. The circumstances, the facts of that is that whatever the exact words mom said, you are the one deciding if it's neutral or critical. You are the one that gives it meaning, that whatever you do, it's never good enough for mom, or that she's always so negative and why can't she just be happy for me that I finally got a new couch? It's not her words, it's the meaning that you're giving them. Or when your husband doesn't help plan your child's birthday party and you have been in a frenzy for days. The facts are you ordered a cake, you called and invited the grandparents over, you cleaned the house, you bought the presents, you wrapped the presents. Husband did not. Those are the facts. Everything else about it is your thoughts, and they're not wrong. But how you think about it and how you feel about it is up to you. Even if 14 other people agree that your husband didn't do enough or that he's lazy or unreliable, they are just your thoughts and the way that you're choosing to interpret the situation. It's not right, it's not wrong. And as a coach, when I talk to you about things, I'm not judging you or giving you my opinion, but we do strip things down to separate out the circumstances and the facts from your thoughts because we can change your thinking if you want to. We can at least examine your thinking. That's where your power is. So we look at your thoughts as being the way for you to feel better, being a way for you to show up differently in the world. That is the way that you can feel more confident and calm and more present in the moment. All right. And so I know this can be a lot to wrap your mind around. It took me a while to really understand it too. And it's okay if you just need to kind of process it for a while. And journaling can be really helpful to separate out circumstances from thoughts. So a lot of people don't like journaling. I get it. It's not always my favorite exercise either, but when I'm trying to clear my mind, it's the first thing that I go to, and it works. So if you're just trying to separate out the thoughts from the facts in an example like this, your circumstances are essentially going to be like a police report. Who, what, when, where, why. Very factual. The person arrived at 5:10 p.m. at this address. Person exited the car and walked to the front door. Okay. No adjectives, no describing words. There's no emotions with it. Most of the time, though, our stories that we come up with in our mind, or if you're retelling it to someone else, is much more like a soap opera than a police report. The person peeled into the driveway at 5:10 in their jacked up truck and came to a screeching halt. They stomped up to the sidewalk, they were radiating anger, and they banged on the front door. Totally different feeling to it than the first one because we added feelings and emotions to it. We added judgment and thoughts about it. Same thing, just a lot more interpretation. So when you start looking at events in your life, what people say, how people act, whether you think that they are judging you, all of those things that are going on in your mind, your brain is going to offer you thoughts. It's going to skew towards the negative. And the first step to making any changes is always that awareness. And so when you notice it coming your way and it's giving you all of these things to worry about and think about and, what's going on wrong, and you can just be like, yeah, these are thoughts. Thanks, brain. You're offering me lots of options. Okay. It's like a toddler screaming for attention. And you just pat them on the head and like, yep, I see you. and then it can go. You don't have to keep hanging on to them. That's the power of learning how to manage your mind. When you start looking at these things more neutrally and your brain has the opportunity to calm down, you gain authority and power back in your life. You start to take these circumstances that are genuinely neutral and interpret them in a way that serves you rather than a way that is frustrating and disappointing and worrying to you. That's not to say that everything is going to be that way. And that's not how I coach people and teach people. It's the awareness of what you're making it mean to these circumstances. And there are going to be times that you are really set on it being negative, and that's fine. There are things in my life that I'm just not willing to think about in a more positive way, whether it's somebody's death or different events that happened. And I just accept that those are negative. I've given them a negative meaning, but then I can let all of the other overthinking about it go. Okay. You become more conscious and aware of a present moment and how you're thinking. You aren't doing those knee-jerk reactions that you feel like you don't have control over. This is what managing your mind's all about. You get to decide what everything means and how you will use each circumstance, either serve your life or detract from it. And that's up to you. Your circumstances are neutral, and what you think about is going to determine your life. I would love to work with you one-on-one individually and help you sort out the different aspects of your life that are causing you pain, that are causing you problems, to be able to get to the place where you can calm your mind, stop second guessing everything, be able to enjoy little moments, and ultimately to find that inner peace that you're really craving. So you can visit my website, coachwithkristen.com, to learn more and also to find me on either Facebook or Instagram. And I would love to chat with you. Consult calls are free, and we will talk about what's going on in your life, what it is that you're looking for, and how coaching can help you. So you can sign up for those free consult calls on my website, coachwithkristen.com. And I will talk to you again soon. Have a beautiful day, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Stop Overthinking podcast with Kristen Odegaard. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else who would benefit from the message. To learn more about working with me and links to social media and free resources, head over to my website, coachwithkristen.com. That's Kristen spelled Kristen. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss future episodes. Have a great week.